If you can't beat them, join them. Horace returns as we discuss the almost painfully overpowered 4-1-2-1-2 narrow. Why do we use it? How do we use it? What players do we use? Will there be a fix? Plus we get one of FUT's biggest traders, ElyytFIFA, into chat rogue traders, and this week's big market battering bonanza, Black Friday. What do EA have up their sleeve, and when should you buy and sell? Finally, we've got a particularly tempting team of the week and two fascinating player reviews, including the best Premier League dribbler you'll use for 50k. I'm your host Ben, and you're listening to the FUT Weekly Podcast. Hello and welcome to week 9 of the FUT Weekly Podcast. We're almost at the Big 10 and someone is joining me this week who hasn't been here since week 2. Yes, it's Horace, he's back.
Hello.
The FUT Weekly co-host has made his fabled return and yeah, how are you?
Yeah, I'm good. Sad not to have been on for, I guess, over 2 months, which is a pity.
Crazy.
Time's been flying, been very busy.
Yeah, it's just been hard to synchronise our calendars, hasn't it?
Yeah,
but,
exactly.
Yeah, it's good to finally have you on. I suppose the first thing to talk about would be those promotions we've had over the last few weeks. You know, a lot of people have complained about the lack of content that EA have been putting out, as if, you know, for some reason it's lacking on last year, etc. I mean, would you agree with that?
I think I probably wouldn't agree that there's been less content than last year. I think the only thing we've not had, well, they didn't do Movember cards that we had last year, but that was sort of a non-promotion, really. They were fairly irrelevant to gameplay.
Must be forgetting that lone Movember
Rodriguez card. I kind of wish they'd just released that SBC again.
Yeah,
that would have been quite funny. Yeah. But I guess, so the big criticism of Scream promo maybe was they didn't do those SBCs that we had last year.
Player SBCs.
What was it? Douglas Costa, Mario Gaspar and Dimitri Payet, where you could get a position change for each of them. And I guess if people were then expecting those and didn't get them, I could see how that would lead to disappointment. The general criticism of it as being like the Scream cards are pointless, they're boring cards, they're not relevant to the game. I don't really buy into that so much. I feel like they're more cards. The fact that they're going to get boosted a couple more times throughout the year makes them slightly more relevant. Though I agree, like none of them are especially relevant to like kind of top tier play. I've been using Perisic, who's good.
Ribery does have that massive boost, doesn't he?
Yeah, the Ribery card, I just hadn't realised how big a boost he got. I came up against him in FUT Champs when he was boosted, and I was like, what the fuck? He's like 92, 93? Because I thought that the boosts were kind of proportional to the players overall, and the higher overall. Perisic only gets a +3.
Yeah, exactly.
Whereas, Ribery gets, I think, +5, maybe +6 even. So it's quite interesting. There doesn't seem to actually be much kind of rhyme or reason as to how those boosts are calculated. Obviously, you get fun ones, a bit like the kind of 80 pace Mertesacker last year, where Peter Crouch gets a massive pace boost.
But actually, it's funny you say that. I mean, we have had player SBCs. You know, we're going back to the player SBC thing because we had the Path to Glory SBCs. We were talking about the Rigoni with Kieran because, of course, that card is likely to get a team of the group stage, so it could be a really good option if you if you didn't do it. Sorry, because you won't be able to do it now, but you know it was quite a good option.
I was going to say, I picked him up. I saw that as well. I was looking on like Who Scored or whatever, one of those like real life player stats sites, and it was looking like he's probably nailed on for a Europa League team of the group stage card. That 5-star weak foot looks pretty nice. But kind of back to the point about whether there's been a lack of content, I think it's sort of an element where the game is a victim of its own success. The player base is so big that it's always going to be impossible to satisfy everyone with almost anything you do. Someone will find something to criticize it for. That's kind of beside the point in terms of the question of the amount of content. But what is relevant to the amount of content and the huge size of the player base is the amount of time that people in the player base have to devote to the game. There will always be people who basically do all the content and are playing FIFA almost non-stop. And for them, they will get bored of content very, very quickly and demand more and basically say the content you're putting out isn't enough and say that there isn't that much content, whereas you'll have someone who's much more busy who'll be like I guess more casual players who will see, oh, there's this new thing, Scream cards, like what's that? I will look into it a bit. I'll pick one up, because it's really easy to forget when you're so as invested in the world of FIFA as we are, and many of our listeners are, I'm sure, how much of the player base is very, very casual in terms of how much they play.
It's like the belief that majority of players are playing FUT champs.
It's a much smaller proportion of people that actually play for FUT champs. I mean, we had a question from someone who was asking. I guess we could answer it now outside the post section.
Crazy.
Breaking the rules. Spend 2 months away, come
this
back,
is what happens.
Smash everything up. But yeah, we got a question from @Goonerologist who said. Who wanted to ask how many attempts it generally takes a pro or an aspiring pro to win the daily knockout tournament. As a casual gamer, I've only got in once. Most weeks I try a couple of times and tend to lose in the semi-final or the final, which kind of, I guess, sheds some light on how a lot of people interact with FUT champs and weekend league, which is it's something they'll do very occasionally. They'll maybe have a couple of goes at the daily knockout each week. Sometimes they'll qualify, but most of the time they won't. And you compare that to people like ourselves who aren't top tier players, but we take FIFA fairly seriously. And even at our level, will generally qualify first time, and if not, then second time. You can always run up against someone who's really good, but in general, you walk the tournament.
Unless I'm like really strapped for time during the week, like I'll always qualify. If you know what I mean.
It's not really an issue qualifying once you reach a certain.
And the point about how long will it take a pro player to do it? I mean, literally, a pro player would walk the tournament, probably rage quits in every round. And this is why I'm sort of like, people are like, we talked about this last week, but the skill gap, there's no skill gap, or the skill gap's too tight. But actually, there is a huge gap between your casual player and your pro player.
And I think potentially even people suggesting there's less of a skill gap this year. It's kind of become the bugbear of a lot of people in the community. It's just a buzz phrase that's going around. I guess there probably is a point. It does feel like the average quality of opponent in Weekend League has gone up this year, which may be because the numbers of people playing Weekend League aren't as big.
Yeah, because we were kind of talking about this last week, that you could see like a drop-off of players playing for champs just because why would I play and get beaten every week? The only thing is, I don't know, I've got this feeling that I will be very surprised by if this time next year it's the same.
Yeah.
I think they'll make changes to it at some point. Whether that's like changing the reward structure or changing the format, which I think is the best thing to do. We'll have to sort of wait and find out. In fact, talking about the Weekend League, and something that I really notice is the difference in the way people play in Weekend League in terms of the formations that you use and the kind of cookie cutter teams and formations in the Weekend League compared with divisions, whereas in divisions, which is relatively competitive in itself, in the higher divisions, you tend to get a huge variety of formations. And there's one particular formation which I've banged on about for a long time, and it's just way too effective. And it was last year, and it's come back. It is, of course, the 4-1-2-1-2 narrow.
I've been using it.
Yeah, and I've been using it. And I didn't want to use
Ben,
it.
You never follow the meta.
I know.
You're doing it.
I felt like I kind of had to. It's unbelievably effective. And the thing was, it was really effective before the patch. It's become slightly less effective. But the problem is they nerfed passing, but I don't think they nerfed it enough. If you've got good passing players, they can still sort of ping-pong it up the pitch in the same way.
Yeah, they have nerfed passing, but equally I've still had opponents with like fairly physical but not very technical fullbacks play 40-yard cross-field lob passes that drop straight to a winger's feet on their weaker foot. And obviously in a game with RNG that can happen. But that's fine.
It's pretty consistent.
It feels like it's come off sort of 3 out of every 4 times someone's tried it against me. Probably they have only tried it against me 4 times because it's not really something you tend to try in FIFA. But it feels like the way they nerfed passing didn't really work. I feel like massively increased variance in high skill passes, such as long passes and through balls, for players with lower stats would have been quite an effective way of valuing passing skills, and also still include the variation that gets added if you're passing beyond the 90-degree
yes, because that's all they really did. Was it was more about sort of the direction you're facing when you make the pass to someone behind you or whatever. But actually I think through balls and things like that are kind of too accurate from poor quality players. And I notice now that one of the main ways that people try and score, and is why the narrow formation is so effective defensively, is people are essentially trying to just get that through ball, release that player, catch you on the counter. And I played a game, right, where this guy played part of the bus the whole game, the entire game. He was playing the formation we're talking about, 4-1-2-1-2-2. And if you look, so he scored in the 87th minute after it was 0-0 the whole time, and one breakaway goal, and won it. And if you look at the average position of my centre-back compared with his centre-back, which you can see in the player performance at the end, his David Luiz was like solid red, because it's a heat map, so it's darker. It was just solid red, just on the sort of inside his penalty box, basically, which is outside. And my centre-back was on the halfway line. For the whole game, pretty much. And I think part of the bus is another problem with that formation. It's just really hard to get through.
It's a very, very tight, compact formation, and it is interesting because I think around the time I was last on, we were talking about how we were really hoping that this year you'd have more variation in play style, that you'd be able to use the width more, you'd be able to drag an opponent's team out. But we're actually kind of back to a game that now feels a lot like FIFA 17.
If anything, more like worse in the way that
more FIFA 17 than FIFA
17. So I don't know. It just feels almost more kind of.
You're more restricted in what you can do.
That's what I mean. Yeah, it's just frustrating. Like I want to be able to play with wide players, but that formation just works so much better than the other ones.
It is interesting, actually, looking at my kind of first team that I've had in terms of how I've set it up over the course of FIFA 18. I started out playing 4-2-3-1 second variant, so with left mid and right mid. And then the next kind of big iteration of my first team, when I reworked it, I did 4-2-3-1 standard version with the cams, which is a bit of a narrower formation. And then the third and most recent iteration of my team is 4-1-2-1-2-2. And I have switched back to the 4-2-3-1 regular a couple of times, but I just feel like I'm at a disadvantage in most of the games I play if I don't do the 4-1-2-1-2 narrow. And
the one way to counteract it is, I think, that 3-4-2-1 formation. I find I'll switch to that towards the end of games, go high pressure, team pressing, and that tends to sort of create more openings if someone's kind of part of the bus, because you have your right mid, left mid able to kind of create an option with the right forward and left forward in the wide positions where they only have one left back and one right back, rather than like a winger able to defend in those positions. So it kind of like uses the width really effectively. And of course, because they've only got three attackers, really, you can kind of get away with having three centre backs, probably using a left back and right back as the wide centre backs, because they're very quick. So I find that has worked for me. But if the player's a very good player, often that's just not going to work. If they're very experienced with that formation and know exactly what they're doing. And I've only had one person counter that by switching to a formation with a left winger and a right winger, which is really hard to defend if you've got three at the back. So absolutely. But generally, people don't counter it that well. But I think formation countering is increasingly important. It's just so hard. There's just so few options to counter that formation, because that's the only formation which has that many players in the centre of the pitch. Yeah,
it is just a frustratingly effective formation. I guess it just packs the areas that you want, but you still have those three players up front, and there's very little you can do, because passing triangles in real life football are an incredibly effective way of attacking, and if you've got your cam and two strikers, you can create triangles with the three of them,
and often you'll be up against their two centre backs, and it's a goal. Like, I think it's as simple as that, isn't it? So yeah, it's a slight disappointment. I really hope that, I don't know whether another patch will help or what they can do about it, or whether it's just going to be one of those long-running meta issues that the game has. Just because I wonder if it's defensive AI issues, sort of like not picking up that there's basically the CDM should just stick on the cam like the whole game. And I have tried man mark and it seems to work. The problem is if you do man mark on other and you have it set from the start, and then other formations you're playing, sometimes it doesn't work very effectively because you've only got one CDM. So if they've got like, I don't know, let's say three midfielders who are all centre mids, like who does the CDM man mark? It's kind of becomes more of an issue. So it's an interesting one, and if people have found ways that they've managed to kind of overcome this, then please let us know, because it is pretty difficult. I know a lot of kind of your top players, like if you listen to the Foot Champions podcast, of course, which has just started and no doubt will have retweeted on our Twitter and is really, really worth checking out. Just search Foot Champions podcast. Basically, Michael Bittner, aka Megabit, was on that podcast, and he was saying that...
who we should probably mention has gone 80-0 so far this month.
He's quite good, yeah. So he was saying that the way that he plays in pro tournaments is very different, and that he tends to use the 4-2-3-1 with the cams, switch to that. Whereas if he's playing in the weekend league regularly, he would go for a narrow formation, basically because when you're playing these kind of players that you'll come across as a general player in the weekend league, they will be overpowered by your 3 ridiculously good, if you're a pro player, attackers. Whereas if you're playing other pros, you need to exploit the wider areas and you need to take advantage of that, which is maybe something that comes with having much better players in your team. Why you might make that change, because I don't know how many sort of left mids and right mids there are that are really kind of top class. If you don't have a ridiculous amount of coins, then there aren't too many options. So maybe that's one of the reasons why.
Yeah, it's true. It is. Maybe it's kind of one of the easiest team ways to build an effective team.
The narrow formation. Yeah, definitely. Cool. So that's our frustration with 4-1-2-1-2.
We haven't solved it. We've just told you that it's a bit annoying.
And you guys, I'm sure, probably know that already. But I don't know. It's interesting, and actually one of the things that we should probably discuss before we move on is kind of how we've been using it to the best effect, and for people who may be considering going into it, having heard us say that it's OP and horrible and we never want to play against it again, they're probably keen to try it out if they haven't already. So what would you kind of recommend in terms of those front 3? What kind of players are you looking at there?
Well, the way I'm set up at the moment, I've got Baby Crespo as my left striker.
The man, the legend.
Yeah, the man, the legend, the myth. Not a myth. He's real.
He's actually real, yeah, and he's very good.
Alejandro Gomez as my right striker, and Scream Perisic as my cam.
Nice.
It's probably not an optimal setup, but it works quite nicely.
They're on 5-star skillers, so it's definitely not.
Don't have any 5-star skillers, so obviously Ben is disgusted. But yeah, Perisic with the 5-star weak foot is very nice to have because you can go either way with your cam. He's got pretty good passing. Crespo is just a bit of a god for me. He's obviously not a top tier icon, but he is just below that. He is very, very strong.
Have you been using him on Engine as well? Because I remember obviously my review last week we were talking about him, and I was saying Engine I think is the way to go on him. But
I
remember you saying you bought him with Hunter, didn't you? But
I used him with Hunter probably for the first 40 or 50 games that I played with him, and he was scoring well over a goal a game in FUT Champs and assisting a bit. But I did feel like his link-up play was a bit lacking, and also maybe just his agility and balance weren't quite there. And I found that with Engine, you get that agility and balance that you need. He feels stronger as a result, and his finishing is still so clinical. I think maybe as we get further into the game, obviously by the time we were at Team of the Season last year, you felt like you were at a massive disadvantage if your strikers didn't have 99 finishing, 99 shot power, but we're not there yet. I think you can still eat. He's got kind of, I think, 90 and high 80s for finishing and shot power respectively, maybe 91 finishing. That's more than enough at this stage, I find.
He is an exceptional player, but that's
back to the 4-1-2-1-2.
Always getting carried away with Crespo on the podcast. Just what happens.
Love him too much. The way I tend to build up my attacks, the formation obviously lends itself to counter-attacking. You can sit deep and then play it up to your cam, either play a 1-2 with a striker or just go straight for a through ball if they're making a run. I find a very effective through ball to play is if you've got your striker just making a run on the shoulder of the centre-back or the full-back when you've got the ball kind of slightly further out wide is a very effective ball because
from your left-back or right-back maybe.
Yeah, from your full-back, because I think that's one of the big AI problems, or not problems, but one of the ways that the AI nerfs this year have manifested themselves is that full-backs and centre-backs won't track those runs preemptively. So I
wonder if an option could be offside trap then.
Yeah, potentially. That could be, if you time it right, you can definitely catch people with that. But yeah, so I think kind of counter-attack is obviously one way to play, but I try to play at possession if I can, the 4-1-2-1-2. And what I've been doing recently is, I'll come to some of the players, I think, in the review section of this episode, but I've been using my fullbacks to attack quite a lot and generally having at least one of them on always overlap if I'm chasing the game or it's 0-0 or level score. Obviously, if I'm trying to defend a lead, I'll whack that back to balanced or even stay back. But it really does help. You can just get your fullback to bomb on and create quite a lot of space, either for the fullback to use or they're creating space for other people. And if you have fullbacks with high crossing, you can really just create havoc in your opponent's defence.
Nice. Yeah, no, that sounds like a solid setup. I mean, I've gone for a really budget option this weekend because I've like sold up for Black Friday, which you'll hear more about when we talk to the trader Elyyt a bit later. But what I originally had was a sort of right centre mid and left centre mid who are more attacking, or had better attacking stats. So I had Lallana and Brozovic. And Brozovic with a defensive chem style is fine, but I wanted to go for something a bit more defensive so that I could afford to attack my left back and right back a bit more. And also because you just don't really need that much support from your centre mids in the formation.
Yeah.
Which is one of the reasons why it's a bit of a joke. So it's really cheap actually, apart from Gabriel Jesus. I set up, because I wanted to get a 5-star skiller in, and there are very few central 5-star skillers, apart from Ronaldinho, of course, possibly a future purchase. So I went for the 4-4-1-1 to start with, just to get it to work, and then I switch in game. But what you end up with is Gabriel Jesus at left striker and Inaki Williams at right striker, who is a tank of a man. He's got 84 strength on the card, and he's got, with sniper, has this like ridiculous dribbling, obviously great finishing, and he's by default got rapid pace. It's like 94 or something, so he's really good. And him on the right strike spot, and then on the left strike you've got Gabriel Jesus, and then at cam you've got Nani, he is really good for such a cheap card. I mean, he's one of those players that I'm desperate to get in inform, because he'd just be
my god, he'd go straight up to, he's 83 now, so he'd be an 85 with one inform. I think he'd be really strong. He's got 5-star, 5-star. 5-star, 5-star, which is really good fun, and especially as a cam, it's great having the option to go either way. And then you the rest of the team, I mean, I've gone for a very not attacking, but a very kind of I guess balanced in terms of attacking play, left back in Ansaldi, who isn't the quickest, but actually with Shadow he's a really good option. And then at right back we've got DeMarcos, who, and both of them are just really decent all round. DeMarcos
right backs.
Was
good stamina as well.
He was like a bogey player for me last year.
Oh, really?
Whenever I came up against him, I just really struggled.
I know what you mean, actually. Yeah, those two have been really good. I mean, DeMarcos has like 93 stamina, so I feel like I've just done 2 dynamite discards.
We've got a whole load of bonus player reviews. But I'm making up for not having been on for a few months.
Should have saved them for future weeks. But they're really good. Maybe I will go into the depth about those in future weeks. But I mean, the team probably, because you've got Gabriel Jesus, if you take him off, I've got Manolas, Koulibaly, I think Fernandinho, João Mario and Alan as the midfield and defence. So like it's a cheap team, but it's been really effective for me. I'm doing pretty well in weekend league considering. So I mean, that's pretty much the team that I'm running with, but they sound kind of similar in terms of the way they're set up.
Yeah, I think so. Is it time to have a bit of a market chat with Elyyt?
So we'll send you off to the break room.
Go have a Foot Weekly podcast break, trademark.
The best break.
So good.
Welcome back. As I said, I'm here with Elyyt. He is a very experienced and widely followed foot trader. Do you want to explain a bit about what you do, Elyyt, before we get into the questions?
Yeah, I do. Well, I stream every single day, and I take the highlights, the most important points. I put them into my series Trading to Glory on YouTube, and I've been trading since FIFA 14. I didn't trade much in 15, but I picked it back up late 16, did a lot in 17, have been on a lot in 18. I am strictly against buying FIFA points, and I just do everything with the market, and I don't like playing games as much. It makes me mad, so that's why I stay on the transfer market.
You even have an emoji which is crossed out FIFA points, is that correct?
Yeah, I have an emote on Twitch dedicated to no FIFA points.
So you're pretty committed to that. That's a key priority. And also the other thing is that we like to ask any traders that come on the podcast is, what's your kind of favourite ever trade that you performed? What's your highlight?
My favourite ever trade, back in FIFA 14. This worked really well. It doesn't work as well in normal FIFAs, but whenever somebody would score in a big match, their price would skyrocket. That's just how it worked in FIFA 14. So I was watching the World Cup final very intensely, waiting for something to happen, and then in the 114th minute it was, Mario Götze scored, and I went and picked up 10 Mario Götzes for 20,000 coins. He went to 130k. I made $1 million coin profit in about 30 minutes.
Oh, that's insane. So that was kind of like early one to watch, essentially, wasn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it kind of was, but it didn't make as much sense because they didn't dynamically upgrade. It was just a normal gold card.
Yeah, it's very strange to think about, actually. So let's talk about some questions we have. We're, of course, wanting to talk about Black Friday because that's the big event coming up. Sort of traders and people in the community have been talking about the market and the Black Friday market for a while now. What are your thoughts on sort of what's happened so far? What have we seen over the past few weeks and compared to previous years, I suppose, especially?
I think that we might have seen the lowest point overall. Like, obviously, there's going to be a select few of cards that are going to hit their lowest point depending on how they play in games and what happens through this next couple of days. For the most part, I think most have hit their bottom, but overall, it really hasn't risen like a lot yet. It has barely risen. If you take a look at the Index 100 over on Footbin and you look at the daily graph compared to, let's say, exactly a month ago when the market was at 108 points, and the market is now at, it says 70 points, and we have seen it get down to about 64 points, and I'm talking about Xbox, but overall, when you compare it to what it was before to what it is now, we have barely seen a recovery. So we're bound to see the market absolutely skyrocket like towards the end of the Black Friday promotion and that week following. So I've already gone and picked up ones to watch Lukaku, because I saw him hit the lowest he's been yesterday, so I picked him up for 675,000 coins on Xbox. Thought that was a good deal, and I could see him over 800,000 coins probably after the first week of December.
So what we're kind of thinking is around now is buy time. You shouldn't get caught out if you're going to buy now or over the next couple of days, but it's true that often around Black Friday we tend to see a bit of an increase in prices, especially of the elite players which aren't in packs or special items. Do you think that'll be the case this year?
Yeah, so basically this is how I put it. If they are a card that isn't like, let's say, Mbappe or Gabriel Jesus or Florenzi, those are like low-rated gold cards between 81 and 83 rated that still are holding value. Those cards are going to be the ones that are dropping on Black Friday just because of the sheer amount of supply for those low-rated gold cards in the packs.
Yeah.
Mbappe, there's no way an 83 rated gold card, unless he's like out of packs or something during that time, is going to hold a value of 110,000 coins. There's just no possibility.
Yeah.
But for cards like Ones to Watch who aren't in packs, and for previous informs, and for even, big icons that are in packs, for even the elite cards, Messi, Ronaldo, Neymar, Bale, Royce even, and in previous years we saw cards such as like Mkhitaryan, who was like 85 rated last year or 86 rated. He went from 14,000 coins all the way to 32k right after Black Friday. It was ridiculous for these cards, just skyrocketing in price. So for the elite cards, those guys are going to rise during and after Black Friday. But for the lower rated,
so an example, I'm thinking I might pick up Ronaldinho. I mean, that's quite a big card. Is someone like that I would want to pick up probably over the next few days, you're saying? But if I was wanting to pick up a Gabriel Jesus, then I'd probably want to pick him up on the day.
For sure, yeah. Because Gabriel Jesus, 81 rated. But Ronaldinho, there's probably more than just a few people looking to buy a Ronaldinho during Black Friday, and the sheer amount of coins that are going to be generated through the promotion. You got to understand there's a ton of FIFA points going into the game during that time. Not from my account, of course, but there are a lot of FIFA points going into the game, which is generating coins into people's accounts, and people are getting more and more coins, which makes, ultimately, the coins are less valuable, because there's just more of them in the game. It's like inflation, I guess. So the more that the coins are in the game, the more people that can afford to buy players like Ronaldinho, and then ultimately that causes his price to go up. And that's why we see such a big rise in prices, because this is the first big promotion of the year for FIFA normally. I mean, I guess you could argue that Halloween was kind of big this year, but it'll have nothing compared to Black Friday.
And another thing that would be interesting to talk about is changes that have happened since last year. We've obviously got Icon SBCs. Do you think that will prop up the prices of the Godins and your Oblaks, for example?
Yeah, for sure. By any logical move, EA are going to drop icon SBCs on Thursday, the day before Black Friday happens. So it'll happen on Thanksgiving for you guys in the USA. So there's going to be requirements of probably low-rated icons. We could see maybe Schmeichel take a huge rise, maybe a defender, depending on what position really they need for that icon, because they've done 2 like central players. So anything between CDM and striker have risen, but the wingers haven't, the defenders haven't, and the goalkeepers haven't been needed yet. So we're going to see at least one of those positions needed. You have no telling on what it's going to be, but they're probably going to rise the price of those icons. They might just make it like in general an icon would be required. That might be smart to keep each icon from crashing during Black Friday. Like Schmeichel, if he weren't required, I could really see him crashing to 150, 140k.
That'd be interesting. In terms of another thing, last year we saw the Team of the Week SBC around the time of these kind of things to moderate the prices of the slightly lower rated cards. Do you think we will see that again, or do you think that could be a thing of the past because of icon SBCs?
We actually talked about that a little while ago. Do they need to have things like Team of the Week SBCs? Because if you think about it, Team of the Week SBCs are not because they want you to have fun on the game, okay? They want to use those to make people buy more FIFA points because they give informs more value, and also giving 83s and 84s more value. They want to stabilize the market so that cards that you pack have more value, so people are inclined to buy more FIFA points. That's it. Always comes back to that with EA. It's not. They don't really care if you're having a good time on the game. So the icon SBCs are going to make 83s. 83 plus golds are going to be needed, maybe 84 plus. There are some 83s that don't really rise into that. We saw like Perrin, the goalkeeper from Italy, 83 rated. He stayed discard price even throughout that time where other 83 rateds were going up to 4,000 or 5,000 coins. But all 84 rateds were needed. You could throw in any 84, Falcao, anything, Berkey. They all fit into the squad some way or the other. And 84s all rose. And that's pretty much what they used Team of the Week SBCs for. Now, could we see them still to make them even higher in price? Yeah, but I don't think they're going to need to do it this year. So ultimately, I don't know if they will. So yeah, the 83 plus informs and 84 plus golds, all those guys are going to be needed for SBCs. So those are the guys to kind of look at for them being inflated in price, kind of artificially inflated by the icon SBC. Anything else, though, they're gonna have to come out with either another SBC to hold them up, or they're just gonna crash.
And I guess it kind of would make sense, therefore, if anyone's looking to do the prime icon SBCs, just definitely don't do them on the Thursday. Surely the chances are they'll be. I mean, apart from maybe icon players, but the actual sort of standard gold players, it would just be crazy to submit them at that point. Just to sell them on if you have them.
Yeah, I mean, normally I'd say the best day is to do that. Probably Tuesday is the best day to do an icon SBC. Maybe like a week and a half after they release. It just seems like a good time because you don't want to wait until there is going to be hype for another icon SBCs, because then the cards start rising again, people investing. So you don't want to wait until then, but you also don't want to buy it right away because they're obviously expensive right when it releases.
So you just want to kind of pick the moment in between, basically.
Tuesdays are a really overlooked day for buying. Nobody really thinks about it, but marquee matchup marquee matchups are on Tuesday this year, so there's a lot of packs actually hitting the market on Tuesdays.
That's a good point. Cool. So let's move away from Black Friday. That was very interesting. I'm sure our listeners will feel very informed about that. If they want to catch up on more Black Friday action through your channel, how would they find your YouTube and your Twitch?
youtube.com/ELYYT. So it's like Elyyt, but spelled the most just dumb way possible. ELYYT. You search that on Twitch. You search that on YouTube. You're gonna find me. It'll be the first thing that pops up. Then my Twitter is that. Then add FIFA to the end. So ElyytFIFA. So that's kind of how it works.
Fantastic. Let's get into a few less Black Friday related questions. The first one is, have you got one particular sort of trading method that you want to share with our listeners? Anything you've been finding particularly useful at any kind of sort of coin start level, if you like?
Yeah, actually, one of them that I've been using for the past couple of weeks, and it's worked every single time. It's one of those general trading tips, so that it's not so specific that if everybody knows, it's not going to work anymore. So basically, what I do is right before Squad Battle rewards drop every single Sunday, there are so many people looking at the market at that time, so many people ready to buy, thinking that prices are going to drop from all the supply from Squad Battle rewards. And although there is a ton of supply on Squad Battle rewards, the demand always has outweighed it. Every single week so far, it has yet to fail. Every single week since release, the demand has outweighed the supply. So what I do is I pick up a few cards. Last week I chose Azpilicueta. You can really choose any card of value between like maybe 10,000 and 100,000 coins. That's kind of what I focus on. I'm sure it works with other cards too, but that's what I focus on. So I used Azpilicueta, and I would pick him up for 30,000 coins right before it dropped, and then he'd rise to 38,000 coins, like maybe 45, 50, a couple hours later, but I don't want to hold it for like 12 hours because in the morning they drop again. But they kind of just artificially inflate for couple hours after the Squad Battle rewards drop, and it gives pretty easy 4 or 5k profit per Azpilicueta that I buy. Maybe I buy 10 and I make a nice 40,000 coin profit on Azpilicuetas that night.
That's really good. I guess that's maybe one for not for sort of European listeners, because that might be tricky to execute if they're sleeping at the time, but certainly for listeners in other areas,
that comes out at 1 a.m. for 1 a.m. for the UK. So if you're willing to stay up to like 3 a.m., it'll work for sure. It makes a lot of sense, because actually the Squad Battles rewards, the coins are actually, I reckon, more significant than the pack rewards for those. Not the case for FUT Champs, but I think for Squad Battle rewards, the packs aren't particularly good. That's a good point.
So one last question from me. I know I've seen on Twitter quite a few trading accounts. It's quite a common thing now. You get a lot of trading accounts with fairly significant followings. And I noticed you especially pointing out a couple which perhaps weren't being so legitimate in the way they were running things on their account. And I thought it would be good to ask you, and just, many of our listeners are hardened FIFA players who browse Twitter and probably know what they're looking at. But, it might be useful to just point out that sometimes things are not quite what they seem in the world of Twitter trading.
Right. I've called out a few people on Twitter that either are just completely morally incorrect or completely just scamming their viewers and young following. Obviously, that's not morally correct either. But there are a few people on Twitter that just cannot be trusted. I'm not going to throw out names on the podcast just to be respectful of you guys. But it's really rough seeing people with thousands of followers on Twitter, kind of build up this audience of just impressionable young kids that will just follow their every single word. And so just what I kind of use as a telltale of who is trustworthy and who is not, if you guys aren't like, really experienced traders. If you are, you can point it out pretty quickly. But if you're not, if they don't have like other social medias that they consistently maybe stream off of on Twitch, if they don't upload on YouTube, and they're strictly on Twitter, that is take everything that they say with a grain of salt. I'm not saying that they are scammers. There are definitely a few people that I love on Twitter that only have a Twitter and they don't really stream, they don't really upload. Golden Bear, Gummy FIFA, Patrick Gross, I think his nickname's Simple Blue. There are really good traders
Foot
over on
Economist,
Twitter,
for example.
but Foot Economist, right? Whenever he comes back, but there are definitely quite a handful of people on Twitter just do not know what they're doing.
I think it's a really good point. It's definitely something to watch out for. And of course, we should say that if they've been on this podcast, then we've sussed them out and they're fine.
Right.
I suppose that's worth bearing in mind as well. But finally, we got a question from a listener. I think we've got time for just one. It is from AAM FIFA, and he asks about Lunar New Year promotion last year. The way that they did a kind of discounted cost of packs. They actually said, normally we charge you 50,000 coins for this pack, and for Lunar New Year we're going to charge 25,000 coins. And they did that for Lunar New Year, and he's wondering whether this year for Black Friday they might implement this system.
I do think they'll do that for Black Friday. I do.
Oh, you do?
First reason I think that they will. Last year they didn't, and they got a ton of backlash for it. Even big streamers like Nick28T were like, "This is Black Friday. The whole point of it is there's supposed to be discounts and deals, and there's nothing like that." And they got a lot of backlash from that, and they didn't do it. The second reason is that if they were to do it, half-price packs through coins, I don't think that they're going to be sacrificing any of their beloved FIFA points. I don't think they'll do half-price FIFA points. I do think that they will do half-price packs though, because if they do half-price packs, it could cause there to be less coins onto the market, which could also help stabilize the market as well, because most 90% of packs that you open with coins, even if they're half price, you're still not going to be making back that full amount of coins that you
Without
spent.
a doubt,
You still got to get lucky. You're opening a 45k pack with coins, you're averaging about 10k back.
A lot of the time I see people saying, I just completed this SBC for sort of 10k, 12k, whatever number of coins, and it was for a 50k pack or whatever it was. And you kind of think, well, actually, like, you're never going to get even 10k maybe out of some of those packs.
Yeah.
It is unbelievable like how poor value packs are, although they've done a lot better this year with SBCs and things to make sure that that's not always the case. But yeah, no, that's an interesting point. It'd be really fascinating to see whether they do that, because of course that does have a really big effect on the market. I think Lunar New Year we really saw prices take a bit of a hit, didn't we?
Yeah, definitely. I remember I was actually away for a couple of weeks just with personal issues back when Lunar New Year happened. Before I left, because I kind of left unexpectedly, I didn't know, I was going to go through that rough patch. But ultimately, I still had a team of great cards like Desai, and I had Weah, and I had all these guys in my squad. I come back a couple weeks later, and they've all tanked in price. And, so we definitely saw a drop during Lunar New Year, and we will if they do that, we won't see as big of a rise. There's no way that EA are going to stop the prices like Elite cards from rising. There's no possible way they drop so much stuff to take coins off the market that the prices don't rise. But they could make it not rise as much as we saw last year.
That's interesting, and because one of the things I always think is that coming into Christmas and the new base of players that come into the game at Christmas time and get the game, then they almost have to make sure the market's not massively inflated when they come on, because otherwise they get all these young players coming out at Christmas who see these cards as ridiculously high priced and just think, I'm never going to be able to afford this.
And they do that well, because if you take a look at graphs from previous years, and it'll probably happen again this year, firstly they drop those players that are untradeable on like the 12 weeks or 12 days of Christmas, and that takes coins off the market. Secondly, you've got Team of the Year hype building up, and also there are people selling early, getting their coins off. So you actually do see a drop in prices starting around the maybe third week of December, probably like December 20th. That's when prices start to drop again, which is perfect timing for both EA and I guess investors as well.
So if you want to be really economical with your coins, then the best thing might be to do is to hold until then, when you can almost guarantee EA will make the market at a sort of low point, if you like.
Yep.
Okay, well, that's the long game, I suppose, and that's ElyytFIFA. Thank you very much for joining us. It's been an absolute pleasure.
No problem. Thank you so much for inviting me.
No problem. Look forward to having you soon. Thanks very much.
See ya.
Just before we get into the final part of the podcast, if this floats your boat, don't forget to subscribe. If you're not sure how, go to footweeklypodcast.com/subscribe. Finally, if you're looking to get a more competitive foot fix, why not try our younger, more competitive brother, Foot Champions podcast? Search iTunes, etc., or at Foot Champions Pod on Twitter. Well, another Foot Weekly break for Horace. The first in a while. Must be a
I missed him.
Yeah. People are going to be wondering what actually is involved in these breaks.
Well, it's a trade secret, isn't
it?
It
is a closely guarded secret. Yeah. So let's do something which I know you've been missing over the last couple of weeks, the Team of the Week rundown.
I've really missed doing this. It's one of my favourite things to do.
Saying that with such enthusiasm.
But yeah, no, this is a really exciting Team of the Week. We've obviously got all the players from the international break. We've got that Lukaku, Eriksen, Son, Mane as a terrifying four up front from the Premier League. Also David Silva, but he's a very slow right midfielder, so a bit of a disappointment there. Coming in central defensive mid in the lineup, we've got Tolisso. I've used his base card this year. He's really, really strong. This one just looks even better. I think, Ben, you were pointing out he's got really comparable stats to Arturo Vidal.
Yeah, I think with Shadow you could say he's better, and he's got better links as well.
Yeah, so, the nation really makes him very versatile. In defence, we've got Rodriguez at left back. he looks pretty good, maybe a tiny bit on the slow side, slightly lacking in stamina.
Yeah,
but,
and agility.
So potentially disappointing. Grankvist, another hero card, Swedish, 54 pace. Enough said.
Is that like a random 70 shooting?
Yeah, exactly. So it could be a fun pick at some point if you're trying to make a hipster team, but probably not weekend league viable.
No.
Artur Boruc in goal.
Yeah,
There's many
not
better
that
Premier
exciting.
League keepers, and arguably maybe better Polish keepers as well, with Wojciech Szczesny. Looking at the bench, there's not actually that much to get too excited about. There's Dirar, who's got a position change from right mid to right back, but he's quite an attacking player, so maybe you could drop him in a 5 at the back and send him forwards a lot. But again, I think he's got very poor stamina.
Yeah, I think he does. It's not especially exciting, but there are a couple of players that we wanted to pick out. I think probably the least exciting of those more exciting players is the Atletico Madrid right back, who looks solid with the kind of stats he has. He's quite a large physical presence, and he has over 90 in all his defensive stats, including 97 stand tackle, this is with a shadow, 97 acceleration and 94 sprint speed, and then solid strength with 76, and then that stamina we're talking about, he does actually have 93, which is great. Not the best agility at 73, but yeah, he looks solid, and his composure has been massively buffed from his regular card, which was only 67, so that's an advantage.
Yeah, I was looking at him. I've looked at his base card a bit as well this year as a possible very budget choice for La Liga, though I think there are better budget choices out there. But I think he could be quite an interesting player. He's got really high crossing at 88, and with that stamina, there's a strong potential to get him bombing up and down that right-hand side. Yeah,
something I just wanted to quickly point out, because a few people have sort of asked about it recently, sort of on Twitter and things like that, because we did do this podcast a while ago where we interviewed the guys from the gameplay producers from EA and asked them what composure was. I've seen things bandied about it being different things, but what they said quite clearly was that it's basically like the point at which a player starts to feel pressure from an opponent who's sort of nearby. So someone like who has low composure, if there's a man on them like bearing down on them, then they're going to start to feel that pressure much sooner, and are more likely to sort of play a bad pass or finish poorly. So it's very important. You only really notice it really clearly, I think, with attacking sort of finishing and things like that. But it's definitely a thing in defensive positions as well.
I think there is something where people will say, oh my God, why has my defender played that pass straight to an attacker? And they've said that's just random, like EA's bullshit, whatever. But actually, a lot of the time, if you do check the composure of your defenders, some defenders have really terrible composure, and you do notice that they'll play very wayward passes that feel like they've gone nowhere, completely different direction to where you've aimed them, and that can often be tied to their composure stat.
Yeah, Baye, for example, last year had like 40 something composure.
Yeah, exactly.
So yeah, that's something that's definitely worth noting. But let's move on to another defensive player before we move on to the more attacking players. We've got Madiba Naja, who's someone you've been using in your team, the regular card, I think.
Yeah, I've been using his 84. I've probably used him for 50, 60 games now with Shadow. And this card is obviously, as you would expect, just better all round.
Yeah.
I've really enjoyed his 84, and I'm quite tempted to pick this one up. I might look to picking him up kind of Monday, Tuesday, when his price should be a little bit lower. But with Shadow, he gets 88 pace, 88 acceleration, 88 sprint speed, and some outstanding defending stats: 95 interceptions, 99 standing and sliding tackle and marking, alongside 91 strength, which is just base stat on his card. 84 jumping and 84 aggression at 6'3". He's also going to be very nice in the air. I have found that with his base card, he's scored a fair few for me from corners.
So I think he's got composure in the 80s as well. We should point out that Foothead don't have, on special cards, they do have their composure boosted, but Foothead don't update it for some reason. I think other websites do actually have the composure, but Foothead haven't got to that yet. So it's just worth bearing in mind that some of the special items might have better composure than you think.
Yeah. And also, he's not terrible on the ball. He's got 68 ball control, which is slightly disappointing, but 72 short and long passing is very acceptable for a centre-back, and I've not had any problems with his base card playing it out from the back.
Yeah, and the player that I wanted to talk about next is a bit more exciting, and he's someone we've talked about quite a lot over the past sort of year or so, Manuel Fernandez, who I guess typically in his team of the season you'd probably use as like a box-to-box 4-star skill kind of creative, but this Manuel Fernandez is a little bit different this year because he's got medium attacking and low defensive, so he's definitely more of an attacking player, and previously you would have gone for something maybe which boosted him all round. But on this card, I think you want to play him further forward, and with Hunter he looks great. He's got 99 acceleration, 88 sprint speed, 91 positioning, 87 finishing, 99 shot power, 94 long shots, 96 penalties, and 85 volleys, so shooting pretty amazing. But then he's got really decent passing at 83 short passing, 84 long passing anyway, 83 curve, 83 vision, good crossing, and then he's got 86 agility, 87 ball control, 88 dribbling, and yeah, in his composure in the 80s as well. I mean, he just looks like really, really decent, well-rounded attacking player because he can still defend. He's got like low 70s defensive stats and decent strength at 75. The only thing that might let him down is that stamina, but again, if you're going to play him further forward, maybe it won't matter so much. And he's just an effective player. He's got long shot taker and he's got flair as well. So just a fun card to use, I reckon, and someone that you should be able to pick up reasonably cheaper, around sort of 20k odd.
Yeah, I really loved his a bunch of his special cards last year. I think I used all but one at different points over the course of the year. And obviously the team of the season he got in the end was an excellent card. Yeah. This one does remind me quite a bit of his early informs last year, particularly that stamina at 77, but hopefully you can work around that. Yeah.
So who's the last player that you wanted to pick out?
Yeah, the last player is actually one that I've used a little bit for kind of 5-10 games, probably closer to 5 actually. I've subbed him on a bit in the weekend league this weekend. And it's Adam Ljajic from he plays for Torino in Serie A, and I've seen quite a few people on Twitter kind of bigging him up, saying he could potentially be a bit of a hidden gem. And personally, I found him all right, but not really much better than that in weekend league. He's got by default kind of 83 pace. He's got by default kind of low 80s pace, decent shooting, only 79 finishing, but long shots and shot power both in the mid 80s, which is pretty nice. I think I used him with Engine and found that his long shots were actually acceptable. He did score a couple for me in the few games I played, and it takes his dribbling just up to that level where he does feel fairly nippy and agile, because by default he's got only 82 agility, so that boosts it up to 87, takes his balance up to 90 and his ball control to 93 and 99. Ball control 93, dribbling 99, which is quite nice. But he just felt slightly unwieldy and he felt quite weak in spite of having 71 strength.
That is disappointing.
I know words, I have the best words.
I wonder whether it's to do with his aggression actually. I find sometimes that actually can affect kind of the feeling of strength on a player.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point actually. He does only have 48 aggression, and it did feel like he wouldn't really battle for things. Yeah, because he's got that height. He's 6 foot tall. He's got 90 balance with Engine, and you would expect a player who is that tall with 90 balance and 71 strength not to just feel like they get brushed off the ball by any old defensive player. Admittedly, he was being marked by Patrick Vieira in at least one of the games I was playing, so he didn't really have much of a chance in a shoulder-to-shoulder there. But overall, I would say he's sort of, you get what you pay for with him. He basically is a kind of 17 to 20k inform player, so he's going to feel a lot better than his 79 does, I'm sure. But he's not elite tier by any stretch. We should point out he does have like finesse shot trait, long shot taker, technical dribbler, backs into players and takes finesse shot style free kicks. Yeah, a strong list of traits, including your favourite, of course, man. Yeah. But how was his finishing actually? It was only on 79 because you used Engine. Yeah, because I used Engine, so I wasn't boosting his shooting stats. His composure is sort of just below 80. He scored, I think, 2 goals, both long shots for me. His actual in the box finishing, maybe I just haven't played with him enough, but it felt like he didn't actually get that many chances. So not the seal of approval there. A loud seagull. Yeah, no, long way from the coast, but yeah. So he doesn't get the Horace seal of approval then? No, I think he's fine, but he was a bit of a disappointment. If anyone has any differing views, then do get in touch at Foot Weekly Podcast, or at Foot Weekly Pod even, and also footweekly@mail.com. And the other thing is, if you're interested in sending us any 280 character reviews on Twitter,
we'll happily read them out. I think that now it's 280 characters. You probably can put a review into that. 140, maybe not, but yeah,
bit tight.
Give it a go.
140.
If you do it all in emojis, then you get bonus points. Okay, so let's talk about our own reviews. That's the team of the week in a nutshell. It's not bad. Like it's probably a good one, in fact. But what I find quite funny about these is whenever there's an international break, they basically use it as an excuse to put in loads of Premier League players for some reason.
Yeah.
Like, there's always loads of really good Premier League players in there. But I don't know if that's just a coincidence, but it seems to have been the case the last couple of breaks. But yeah, I don't think there's anyone else worth mentioning at this point. But let's move on to reviews, as I was saying. So have you got a particular player that you want to...
Yeah, so I got a sort of, I guess, a dynamite discard, if you will. And it's a player that who's the most capped player in my club. At I think just shy of 200 appearances. He's a left back. He's only 77 rated. Plays in the Serie A. His brother plays for Man U. It's Jordan Ikkaku.
I imagine he's a player that quite a lot of people will have probably ended up using by now.
Yeah, I suspect he was definitely very popular early on this year. And I stuck him in my team and steadily upgraded the players around him. And I have just this weekend swapped him out for Alexandro. I finally
big money move.
Yeah, big money move. Finally decided to splash the cash on him, just because I'd reached that point where it felt like Lukaku, he was fine defensively, but wasn't quite cutting it going forwards. So yeah, to actually talk about Lukaku in terms of his stats, I played him with the backbone chem style because I wanted to boost his defending, because it felt like it's not very strong by default on the card. It's 72. With backbone, he gets 82 interceptions, 84 standing tackle, 82 sliding tackle. He also gets his strength boosted nicely to 96. But one of the big reasons I used that was to combine a defending and a passing boost, because his passing is fairly weak by default. This took his short passing up to 82 and his crossing up to 78, which actually meant that he could contribute going forwards, and it didn't feel like if I gave him the ball, it was sort of a bit of a crapshoot as to whether or not I was able to maintain possession. And I found that it actually worked quite well, sort of, because people would often, I found, try to pressure him because they see that it's Jordan Ikkaku and they assume he's going to be a bit kind of clunky on the ball and not necessarily going to be able to... it might be a kind of a good opportunity to press and try and win back possession. But he's actually surprisingly good at holding onto the ball. I found he's got 75 agility, 75 ball control, 77 dribbling, and at 6'1", 6'2", with 96 strength. If you boost it with the chem style, he's just a bit of a kind of unit that is going to be able to kind of bustle down that left hand side for you if you want.
I found this really weird thing in squad battles with him where earlier on when I was playing squad battles, the AI just kept trying to like launch goal kicks at their, whatever it was, I guess their right winger, and he would obviously just win it every time. I had this game where I just like kept possession throughout it, because for some reason whenever there was a goal kick they'd just like launch it straight to Lukaku and Lukaku would just knock it down, and he is unbelievable in the air, isn't he?
Yeah, I mean that's a massive thing about his physicality, obviously, because he is so tall. Again, with backbone he gets 84 jumping. His heading accuracy isn't actually that good, and I did find that going forwards occasionally, if he was in the box, he would not do so well on the old heading. But yeah, he's really, really strong defensively in terms of defending long balls in the air.
So it's interesting because I know we like to have a little bit of a chemistry style face-off, but I actually played him on basic and found it was like really well suited, because what you actually get is, because his acceleration is slightly lower than his sprint speed, you actually get both acceleration and sprint speed into 90s. 77 short passing isn't as good as what you had him on, but I found it was like pretty decent.
It's perfectly acceptable,
And then I found boosting his agility was quite helpful, because I tried him with anchor later and found that he's just so much worse on the ball. So his agility goes up to 80, and then he gets that ball control dribbling boost, pushes him above 80 on those. And then you're basically like stuck with not the best defensive stats, but I found it was kind of okay.
I guess his physicality kind of makes up for that a lot. In a shoulder to shoulder, he's still going to do pretty well.
Yeah, and 77 interceptions is actually quite strong for a left or right back. One thing to note is I find that a lot of left or right backs have really poor interceptions, and actually 77 is quite strong. And if you put something like Shadow on him, he gets ridiculous interceptions. He's one of those players that with one inform would be like a stunning card.
Well, because he'd get a +5 probably overall. He'd go straight up to an 82. He'd be phenomenal. And
the only thing to note is the 78 stamina, I think, is one of the problems. I know that's something you wanted to mention about him.
Yeah, I did notice that, and I think if we have a little look at Alexandro as well, that's one of the many differences between the cards. But Alexandro has 93 stamina, and you do really feel that in your fullbacks. Particularly the way I've been playing recently, I've been using the 4-1-2-1-2 narrow, and I've been getting a lot of width from my fullbacks. I've been having at least one of them on always overlap, and using that to get them down the wing, even if that's just to create space and drag a defender out of position from my opponent. But it does mean that your fullbacks are doing a lot of running over the course of a game, and Lukaku just wasn't quite keeping up with that.
Yeah, I can imagine. I mean, Sandro with 93 and Lukaku with 78 is quite a big difference, isn't it?
Yeah, a hefty difference.
But also Sandro is just, I mean, it's just a stunning card. As soon as you put Shadow on him, he basically maxes out his acceleration and sprint speed, and then gets in the 90s interceptions, stand tackle marking.
Yeah, he gets 99 acceleration, 98 sprint speed, 99 standing tackle, 99 sliding tackle. It's kind of insane.
Yeah, and he's already got 80 strength, doesn't he? And 82 aggression. And then he's very sort of good on the ball all around. So
yeah, good enough in the air as well. He's 5'11", 6 foot tall, 79 jumping, and with shadow, 86 heading. High work rates, 86 crossing by default, 81 short passing.
He does seem to be like the left back of choice as well, doesn't he? Like pro players, you see him in their teams. If they've got two legends, for example, and they could choose any left back, they'll often be going for him.
Yeah, it's between him, Alaba, and maybe some variant of Roberto Carlos, I guess.
Jordi Alba, I guess.
Jordi Alba.
He's kind of small.
He's probably a bit too weak, I'd say. Personally, I'd say the two left backs I least look forward to coming up against are probably Alexandro and David Alaba. Just for the combination of all round on the ball defending ability, agility, but also height size, and size. They're just nightmares to play against. A farewell to an excellent player for me, but Alexandro is just a little bit better.
Just a bit.
Ben, who do you want to bring to the reviews table this week?
So my player is someone we mentioned when he was in the team of the week. He's a traditional informed impression, if you like. We picked him out of the team of the week, said he was quite cheap for a Premier League player, said he looked like a really good winger, and it is Riyad Mahrez. And I'm not the biggest fan of the Premier League sort of teams because they just seem a little bit overpriced. But we're getting to that point in the game where they're coming down in price. It seems a bit more reasonable. I think the fact that this year you've seen a lot less hype over Player of the Month, people looking at the Prime Icon SBCs rather than the Player of the Month, means that there's less Premier League teams around because people are maybe choosing the icons over the Player of the Month.
Yeah, I think that's
option. True. Obviously, there are still loads because that's just the nature of it.
Came up against someone with all three Player of the Month cards yesterday in Champs.
I haven't actually come up against that yet.
Yeah, I didn't really enjoy it.
Yeah, it does not sound good. Mahrez. So my review of him is kind of mixed. So he has 99 acceleration and 91 sprint speed. So he does feel quite rapid. This is with Hunter. And I felt that he didn't really feel that quick. And I think it was probably his sprint speed being 91, which didn't help. But also his strength is 53 and his aggression is 42. I do feel like that kind of makes a difference in a kind of, not necessarily pace, but just like,
I think there's something when you've got low strength and low aggression on a winger or just any player, and if they're a bit small, you can do this thing where you'll have a defender pressuring you from behind, and your player just they're ahead of the other guy. Yeah. They just kind of seem to melt.
Exactly.
They just fall off the ball, even though they should just be able to knock it ahead of them and go.
Exactly, and that was a bit of a struggle. So what I did, because I found he was struggling out wide, was I was then experimenting with the 4-1-2-1-2 narrow, and what I found was that in that formation, as a cam, he was actually very good. He's got pretty decent passing. He's got like 84 short passing. This is keeping him on Hunter, and in hindsight, maybe I shouldn't have stuck with Hunter because he's probably quick enough to play cam without that boost. But yeah, 84 passing felt fine. 79 long passing is actually pretty decent for a wide player. And then his ability like on the ball in terms of close control and dribbling around people is really stunning. Like 95 agility, 87 balance, 91 dribbling, 91 ball control as well. He does just feel really good on the ball, and he's got technical dribbler. So that was a lot of fun. And then when you put him in cam, he has the ability to kind of shoot on both feet. He scored some really, really dirty finesse shots against people, which I think they weren't expecting. Because although he's obviously a good player, people just don't expect that to sort of come out of his left foot.
I guess he's just not been that popular
Yeah, he's
in the
just
last
not
2
like a
years
meta player at the moment,
in FIFA at all. So people come up against him and they're just not expecting that much.
No, I totally agree. And I mean, yeah, I really enjoyed using him because he was loads of fun. He's got 5-star skills. His medium work rate was maybe one downside because I didn't quite feel like he committed to the attacks as much as fast as you want. But I wouldn't say it was a huge problem. And I was looking at his card, and one thing that I was wondering straight away is, how does selfish affect online play as a trait? It must just not affect online play, because
I feel like surely that could only be to do with decision making, and
from the AI, right?
You can't make selfish decisions in defense other than not defending. So I feel like that's probably just for offline or kind of when he's under AI control.
So yeah, and the final kind of downside, I suppose, is his 79 stamina. Which is good, but he tires towards the end of a game, especially when I was putting him in cam, I guess, and if he was in a sort of deeper wide position. I'd like to kind of try him maybe at right forward, because I don't really tend to play that formation, but you know, I can imagine that'd probably be his preferred position. But I was playing him as like a right wing, fairly advanced, you know, stay forward. So, and I don't know, he just felt like a bit suspect. I imagine if, you know, you're against a worse player, and whenever I come up against someone who was like not so good, he was like ran the show. So I think if you're a really good dribbler, then and I noticed, I think Harry, who's a pro player for #United, he was saying on one of the early weekends that he was like the GOAT sort of thing. So I think, you know, against certain players, he probably is phenomenal.
Yeah, looking at him, I can really see how he would be a bit of a bully. And I think that comes back to your point of him not necessarily being a meta player. I think if you're like up against someone who really knows what they're doing and has a well set up physical team, you might struggle to create with Mahrez. But if you're up against someone whose head goes, or who just isn't an especially strong player, you could really tear them apart just with Mahrez's speed of movement. Yeah,
no, it was a really interesting player. He's someone that I just recommend people like have a go. His dribbling does feel amazing. It's just worth like trying because it's like top quality for 55k in the Premier League.
Top quality.
For 55k in the Premier League, it's a very good price as well. So on everyone's favourite Slimani perfect link, I think we end this week's podcast. I hope you've enjoyed joining us again.
Yeah, it's been really, really good to be back. Hopefully there won't be such a big gap between appearances next time.
Yeah, look forward to it. Thanks very much again, and thanks listeners for joining us this week. And as always, send in any of your thoughts to @FootWeeklyPod or footweekly@mail.com. See you next week.
Before you go, don't forget to subscribe to the Foot Weekly podcast on iTunes or wherever you get your podcasts. Just go to footweeklypodcast.com/subscribe or search Foot Weekly in your podcast provider of choice. And of course, the discussion doesn't end there. Follow Foot Weekly Pod on Twitter or drop us an email, footweekly@mail.com.